Inadequate is an understatement. I mean, this is profoundly disturbing. The first time around, they tested 277 homes. And you're making the case that they didn't even go back to the homes that had magnificent amounts of lead to make sure that the lead was out of those particular homes. Like,
Yeah.
you would think that at the very least you would have the exact same sample to make a determination of whether or not you're clear. I mean, this
Yeah.
is abysmal. Like, if I'm writing software and I usually would run through a series of tests, and if there's an update, run through another series of tests in the same way. I'm trying to catch the same errors, meaning you had a sample size that you used to declare that lead was in the water, that the water was unsafe. And then coming back again, you don't use the exact same sample. You
Well,
use a smaller sample and say all clear. That's amazing.
just to be clear, so the EPA funded scientist, his name's Mark Edwards. He started out with 277 homes. His study shrunk down after 2 years to 138.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Maybe homes dropped out of the study. So total, he tested 138. But to satisfy the lead and copper rule, which is the main EPA regulation for water testing, you have to have at least 50% of your samples from homes connected to lead service lines. Well, he says he only tested 17 homes connected to lead service lines. Well, half of 34 is 17. So he only looked at 34 total homes in terms of meeting the EPA's lead and copper rule, because you have to have 50% of your sample connected to lead service lines. So he says he tested 17 homes connected to lead service lines. First of all, even if he did, the city has an estimated 30 to 40,000 lead service lines. So 17,
Yeah,
and you're declaring
that's insane. I mean, that's utterly insane. I mean, were these in different parts of the state, or were
that's
yeah, or
Flint.
was it
Flint.
clustered in the area?
Yeah, it was all tests in Flint. But as I outlined in the story, there's no way to even verify that he actually tested homes connected to lead service lines or the state, because number one, they didn't like have plumbers go in and like verify, like dig it up.
Mhm.
Secondly, again, the records are it's patchwork. It's on index cards.
I see what you mean. Okay,
Yeah,
so
so
this is even worse
the
in this case.
records that this EPA funded scientist and the state of Michigan, two separate tests. EPA funded scientist did his test, and the state of Michigan did their own testing. The EPA funded scientist basically was there to confirm the state's numbers. So
Okay.
kind of like thorough, you have one agency reviewing the other.
Right.
They're both claiming they tested homes connected to lead service lines based off a study that the records on that study were written on index cards. I have the guy on the record who did the study saying, yeah, we were missing 11 to 15,000 homes. A lot of them had to be tossed out because we couldn't read them. I do have concerns as far as people using this study to say
the veracity of this study to make claims on. I see what you mean. So this is somewhat worse than I thought then.
Yes.
Okay, so they tested homes throughout Flint, but the way that they tested those homes was relying on data that was somewhat incomplete. And what I mean by it, they didn't go with a plumber to make sure that this is a lead line. They used records that were somewhat dodgy to make a determination on whether the thing that they were testing was actually a lead line. And oftentimes they didn't know. And the person who made the study itself even comes out and says, no one in their right mind should be using this to make a full determination on whether or not this is clear or we're in the clear.
Yes, exactly. But also, it gets worse actually, because
man, I don't know how, but go ahead.
So, okay, Michigan Department of Environmental Quality. You know, every state has their own EPA. So they are the agency that, in the first place, fucked up the water in Flint because they didn't add the proper corrosion control chemicals. Basically, water utilities add certain chemicals to make sure the water doesn't cause lead to leach off the pipes. So they actually lied to the EPA for almost a year because they told the EPA, yeah, we're adding corrosion control.
5 people in prison for that, right?
Not yet.
I thought they were indicted. Let's say that way. Or 5 people were convicted.
People are on pretrial right now.
Okay.
So basically, this agency has a history of lying. Okay. So the agency, there's two types of testing being done by the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality. One is called the Sentinel testing, which the state chooses the homes they're going to test. They choose the addresses, they choose which homes they're going to test. So that's in one bucket. The next bucket is just residential sampling, where any resident could take a test kit that they got at City Hall or wherever, test their water, send it in for testing. That the residents obviously choose, not the state. Well, guess which set of testing is showing up the higher leads?
I would imagine the residents. If I'm taking a guess, I would imagine the residents.
Yes. And the state, like I knocked on doors this past week in Flint. I don't want to get into why, because I don't want the state to know what I know, but you'd be amazed at the homes they chose to test and the homes they didn't. Like I'm talking like one side of the street has like hundreds of parts per billion of lead, didn't test that home. Tested 2 homes across the street, didn't have any lead. Why is that, Jamarl? So there is, this agency has a history of lying. This agency, frankly, I mean, you could call it the agency, but the governor of Michigan is in charge of all of this.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You have a Republican governor who doesn't necessarily believe all that much in governmental services.
And he's also told the mayor of Flint to get over it. Like she came out after their last meeting and basically attacked the governor.
Wow.
Because this governor decided to shut down the water pods around the city of Flint using the same exact data that my report goes into as the rationale. Well, we're meeting the EPA regulations, so now we could shut down the pods. Well, Flint's 45% in poverty. I mean, the majority of people cannot afford to go be buying stacks of bottled water now. 18 to 20% don't have cars. So really, now they're being forced to drink water that is from the tap. Yes, they have a filter, but these filters are flimsy and go bad pretty quickly.
Not just that they're washing that water. I mean, you're still bathing in that water, even if you're talking about a filter. I mean, and I have to be honest, they shouldn't have to do that. I mean, the whole point in a state, are you telling me that we can spend $1 trillion on military but we can't provide clean water? I mean, that's mind-blowing.
Well,
like that should be grossly unacceptable. I mean, for any city to not be able to, at the very least, at a very minimum, water. I mean, fuck, man. It's amazing. Why did they do this? Why did they switch the water? Because there was nothing wrong with the water prior to them trying to switch the water over to some other kind of main. What was the reason?
I can tell you the reason they gave, and then I can tell you the real reason. So they said
it was both. It was both.
They said they were trying to save money because Flint had been getting water for 50 years from Detroit's water system, Detroit Water and Sewage, it was called. So Flint and the governor, the emergency manager, the unelected emergency manager, the governor put in, we're very worried about Russia stealing our democracy. We don't care about unelected emergency managers making terrible decisions that poison people. Anyway, they said that Detroit was price gouging, so we want to temporarily switch to the Flint River while we build our own water pipeline that will be ours, meaning the city of Flint's. So we don't have to pay Detroit anymore. It will be ours. So the Flint River was supposed to be temporary. In reality, that's actually not true because Detroit at the last minute cut down its rates by 50% to try and keep Flint, because Flint was Detroit Water and Sewage largest customer. So Detroit cut it down by 50%. There's an email from a Detroit water official to Flint saying that. So Flint would have saved more money by staying on Detroit at that discounted rate than building this new pipeline. But they wanted this pipeline not particularly to save money, but because it would be a privatized pipeline. And with a privatized pipeline, you know what you could do with a privatized pipeline?
Price gouge.
But also, what do you need a lot of water for? Fracking. So they could take lots of water out of there because Governor Snyder has ramped up fracking all over Michigan, and you can't take endless amounts of water out of a public water utility to frack. You can out of a privatized system. They'll never admit this, but that's most experts, Michigan political wizards know that's why they did it. And what they fatally screwed up, the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, you're supposed to put corrosion control chemicals into the water supply so that the water is treated properly and it doesn't attack age corroding pipes. Like most of the pipes in America are like 60 to 100 years old. So they're already corroding, and they didn't add the proper chemicals into the water. So people have asked me, and I've actually been attacked, strangely enough, by people like, Jordan, it's cool that you care about Flint, but why do you keep going back there? What about all the other communities contaminated? It's like, as I've always said, because it's not just about Flint. This is ground zero.
Yeah.
This is ground zero for what's going on everywhere. So if you take the attention off of Flint, there are no cameras. Every time I'm there, I'm the only person there, other than the local media, which is useless there. Because if we allow the government to poison citizens, then cover it up, then prematurely declare problem solved, that's the playbook they're going to do everywhere else.